Hello and welcome to Cardboard History. I'm David, and today I want to share my mid-year update. Back in January, I set out a list of goals for the year of what I wanted to accomplish with my collection, and now that we're at the halfway of the season, a little bit over halfway of the baseball season with being in the middle of the All-Star break, which fantastic All-Star game last night, exciting ending, not your traditional end of a game, but exciting nonetheless. So we're kind of at the halfway point of the season, a little bit through the halfway point of the year, and I wanted to look back at the goals that I set and reevaluate where I want to go for the second half of the year. So I created a little bit of a slideshow that we can go through that shows my progress and to talk through some ways that I'm reevaluating my collecting moving forward. This kind of plays into the question that's been going around lately about whether or not you go to a show like the National with a list. And a comment that I've seen quite frequently come up has been, you always have a list. Even if you don't have something written down, there's some sort of a list in the back of your mind that is the list of cards that you find. There might be something that pops up that's outside of that. And so for me, when I look at my goals, I do have quite a few collections that are going on, and I'm not always focusing on all of them. So even if I show up to a show like the National, I might have a list, but I may pick up a card or two that's not on the physical list that I bring because it's on my list of things that I'm looking for or collecting. So let's jump into this. This is the 2025 Collecting Goals Mid-Year Check-In. So I had set 14 goals, and these revolved around a lot of Cubs team sets that I'm trying to put together, as well as a few other projects that are outside of my Cubs collecting. So these are the Topps flagship. This is a project that I finished, but each year new cards come out, so I continue to add to that. The T206 Cubs set, which I've been trying to complete, as well as the Bowman. Since I finished the Topps flagship, I also wanted to get the Topps Traded, Topps Update, which kind of completes that flagship set with Series 1, Series 2, and Update, or Updates and Highlights, or Traded, whatever it's been called throughout the years. I'm trying to do a Cubs team run of all of the Topps Gold, which are serial numbered to the year, as well as the Venezuelans. And then I kind of put on Topps Chrome and O-Pee-Chee at the beginning of the year as something that I might want to slowly work towards, but I had quite a ways to go on putting together the Topps, the Cubs team run for both of those brands. And then the last one for the Cubs team is the Topps Chrome Platinum Anniversary, which they are continuing this year after taking a one-year hiatus and trying to get caught up with that. Then non-Cubs team set things that I work on would be the Ken Burns collection, which I'll get into that a little bit later. I started looking at the Monster this year and trying to put together the 520 card checklist of the T206 set. That's a very long-term collecting goal. And then I'm also just interested in collecting different type cards for pre-war and post-war, so that way if someone talks about the E121 or a random set from any time in the vintage era or pre-war era, I can have an example of what those cards look like and know and have something like that. I always try to pick those up in Cubs Player, and so I've centered that around trying to find what cards are out there that have Cubs players in the set. But eventually that will expand out beyond just Cubs. So those are the goals that I had set, but even beyond those goals, as it relates to lists and things that I'm keeping my eye out for, I don't know if it's probably not the proper term, but an all-collective Topps inserts, 50s through 70s. So these are things stretching all the way from the 1955 doubleheaders, which had the kind of tall cards that had players on both sides, going up through, you have the 60s and 70s, you have game cards, you have coins, you have stamps, you have stickers, decals, and all sorts of things that Topps put out, whether or not they were inserted into packs or something sold separately. Anything that was released baseball-wise with Topps brand, I've been trying to collect that as the Cubs team set. I didn't set any goals for that this year like the rest of these because they're things that I just keep my eye open for. Putting together the Topps Pro Debut Rainbows for the past 2 years for all of the Cubs. So that's a little bit more extensive and one that I try not to put too much money into, but kind of something that is fun to see these players and track them as they develop. The Topps Chrome Sapphire, that's a binder set I'm putting together to have all of the Chrome Sapphire cards of the Cubs. And then also some autographs, Stadium Club autos, 5-star autos, as well as the Topps Gilded and the Topps short print variations. So those are all things that I'm looking for. Most of these in this list, except for the first one, the first 50s to 70s, are more modern goals that as cards come out throughout the year, it's something I can do to collect the modern players that I enjoy without, buying a bunch of wax and buying into a bunch of breaks or things like that, and I can kind of stay focused on what I want to collect. So that's a little bit of an overview of my collection, and now I want to start looking at this year and the goals that I had and how I'm doing so far. So I'll start off with the Ken Burns collection. So this is a 462 card list that I put together myself of players or individuals who are mentioned in the Ken Burns baseball documentary. And my goal for this year was to add 69 cards to the set, which I believe would have gotten me to 200 or a little bit over 200, and I have far surpassed that. This has been a significant focus for me over the past 6 months, and I think that's sort of evident in the fact that I'm almost to the 50% complete mark. I chose this Carl Yastrzemski as an example of the cards that I picked up this year from this collection so far. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about this collection and what goes into it, because of the 93 cards I've picked up this year so far, most of them have been in that under $25 range. There's a lot of less expensive cards. So this is a little bit of a breakdown of how the collection works itself out. It would take way too long for me to go through all 462 cards. But the documentary is broken down into 9 innings, the original 1994 documentary. And so I separated out the cards from the players in the inning that they are first mentioned in. So even though Babe Ruth didn't play until the 20s and 30s, he's mentioned right at the beginning of the documentary because of his impact, and so he's one of the players that falls under that inning one category. But for the most part, the years that are shown here represent what inning, or inning one shows these years that are covered. And so like in inning one, there's 66 cards and I have 33 of them so far. I still need 33 more. When I put this together, it became pretty clear I've been neglecting the 20s through the 40s. And part of that is because it's a harder era to collect in. There's a lot of oversized or unusual cards. You get in the 30s, you have cards like the Gaudis and the Diamond Stars, and Tattoo Orbit, a few other a little bit more prevalent cards, but most of the cards that I have in that era are things that are rare or hard to find relatively when compared to 50s, 60s, and 70s Topps cards. And then the first 3 innings are pretty well represented because of my focus on the T206 set, which came out between 1909 and 1911. And I've tried to focus on that portion of the Ken Burns collection over the past year and a half. And so I've made a lot more progress in the early first 3 innings of the documentary, and then the Topps cards, which are a lot easier to find at card shows for cheaper. And there's a lot of cards in the early 90s that can be picked up for pretty cheap that represent some players back then, through different eras that didn't have a card until the junk wax era, when they started making cards about anyone who had anything to do with baseball. The price breakdown, this is a little bit more interesting. I show here the different tiers of card prices, and this is based on comps that I've run. And some of these, like I ran comps on cards like the Lachlan set for the Negro League players, and I did that before their stats were included in the record, and those cards shot through the roof. So a lot of those are under $100 on this list, but in reality they will end up costing me more than $100 if I end up picking them up. So as you can see here, everything's sort of weighted. I think about 65% of the cards are under $25, and that's been the majority of my pickups for this year. If I do some quick math, it's like 83 of the 96 cards that I picked up, or 83 of the 93 cards that I've picked up so far this year have been under $25 cards. I picked up a handful of cards that were in that under $50 range, and then a pair that were over $100, and those would be I believe the Yastrzemski might fall into that range. I don't remember the other ones. And then 2 cards that are a little bit higher value. One of those being the Allen and Ginter 1888 John Montgomery Ward card that I picked up in January, which was the biggest pickup for this so far. So as I look at this, those cards, there's 7 cards that are over $2,500. And for me, these are cards that when I made this list, I thought these may be unattainable cards or cards that I would never get. And I wanted to show those 7 cards, and there's 2 other cards that are above $2,000 in a lower grade. And these are, so with the 7 that are over 25 and the 2 more that are over 2,000, these are the 9 cards that are the most expensive on the list that I'm looking to acquire. But we can go through these real quick. The 2 on the bottom left are Zenit cards of McMullen is the one on the bottom left corner. He was one of the 8 men out in the Black Sox from 1919. This is his only playing days card. The rest of the team has W514 cards from that year, but he had just been called up from the minors. So he has this one minor league card from the Zenit set that's extremely hard to find, and when it does come up, it goes for $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 in poor condition. The card next to that is the Jimmy Claxton. He was an African-American player who signed onto a team because they believed him to be Native American, and then they came to find out shortly after he was on the team that he had an African-American heritage, and so they kicked him off the team. But before they had done that, the Zenit company produced a card bearing his likeness. And these are very hard to find, rarely come up for auction. When they do, they go for significant money. So those 2 cards are ones that I have kind of put outside the realm of when they come up, and I haven't seen either of these auctioned off in the last couple of years. I anticipate when they do, if they're in any decent condition at all, they'll clear $10,000, and that's just beyond my budget. The top left 2 cards are both old Judge cards. The first one, Pete Browning, is notorious for his involvement with the Louisville Slugger. He was the one that hired Bud Hillerick to create the Louisville Slugger and created that brand that has stuck with baseball through all the years. So he's a significant pioneer in the game of baseball when it comes to batting and equipment. And then next to him is George Wright, who was the first owner of a professional league with the Cincinnati Red Stockings. And so both of those are cards from the 1800s. They have several variations of the old Judge cards in different poses, and it could be possible to find one of these someday, but again, they're rare old cards that are hard to come by. Then the 3 cards on the top right, these are cards that, for me, I would consider these a trophy card. A lot of people will call it a grail card, and there's been some debate online about the term grail card. And so I'm using the term trophy card to describe something that might not be a grail, like the Honus Wagner or other cards that are extremely rare and would be the pinnacle of anyone's collection. These are cards that are a little bit more readily available, but would take anyone's collection to the next level. And so these are the Goodwin Champions King Kelly. This is my favorite looking baseball card of all time. That's why I chose this card of his to be in the list. Next to him is the Allen and Ginter Cap Anson. This would be the top. It would be my second favorite Cubs card if I was able to pick it up. Maybe third behind the Banks and the Billy Sunday Buckner Gold coin, which I'm still looking for. But it's one of the great cards of a great player for the Chicago Cubs, or back then when they were the White Stockings. And then the next one is Ty Cobb, and this I chose the green portrait as a representation. So these are all 3 cards that I am looking out for, keeping an eye on prices when they come up, and would love to pick these up. And if I do, they would take my collection to the next level. It would have to be something that I'd save up for a long time to be able to acquire any of them. But they fall into that category, and probably in the same category would be the W514 Joe Jackson, which is the more cartoonish looking card on the bottom, second from the right. I'm trying to put together the W514 set for all of the Black Sox, as well as the Reds who played in that World Series. And this is The most difficult card to find in a good condition at a decent price. So that's in there, and then as well the 1934 Gaudi Lou Gehrig. I love this card and love that it has the Lou Gehrig says on the bottom, which is on most of those cards from that year. So these are the cards that are at the top of the Ken Burns collection, and 4 of them are ones that I will feel like I completed the collection even if I don't pick up those 4, which are the 4 on the left. The 5 on the right are ones that may take me a decade or two to eventually acquire these cards. So that's a little bit of the Ken Burns collection, what I'm looking at, and I wanted to share that because those are some things that I'm keeping my eye out for, and I've been saving up quite a bit for the National, and I'll get into that in my next video when I talk about target cards for the National. But these are the cards that are at the top of the list for the Ken Burns collection. All right, the rest of my goals won't be that extensive, but I wanted to share a little bit more about that collection, the progress, because it's been a major focus of mine this year. So next up is the Monster, the T206 set. My goal for this year was 31 cards, and I'm pretty well on pace. I've done 17 so far, so that puts me at 76 cards of the 520 and 15% complete. Like I said, this is a long, probably decade-long project, if not more, just slowly picking up 30 cards a year, and I'll be done in about 15 years. So that's the pace that I'm going at. I'm not trying to rush it, not going out there and trying to pick up a bunch of low-grade copies just to have them. I did that at first and pretty quickly realized that I wouldn't be happy with the set if it was a bunch of beater cards that had a ton of paper loss and creases and borders missing and things like that. So I'd rather take my time and build a set that I'm proud to own and love to look at. So this year, so far I've picked up 17 cards. I've been focusing on the Southern Leaguers, which are a little bit of a more rare subset within the 520. There's 48 of those cards, and I've picked up 5 of them this year so far. That's been a shift in my focus. Thanks to Jake, Legends Never Die, for kind of pushing in that direction as him and I are both trying to put this together. He also sent me the list, which was developed of the 100 rarest cards, and of those I've done 14 so far. So these aren't ones that I've picked up this year, but I have been focusing more on the 100 rarest and the Southern Leaguers, which most of them fall in that 100 rarest of the T206 set, as well as the Hall of Famers, which I've done 16 so far of the 76. So all of those, I'm pretty well on pace with around 15%, maybe around 5% of Southern Leaguers so far. And then a little bit ahead on the Hall of Famers because of my Cubs collection and the number of Cubs Hall of Famers that are in that team set. So we'll go through the rest of these a little bit quicker. The Topps flagship, my goal for this year was to pick up however many cards came out in Series 1 and Series 2, and I have accomplished that. So that brings that entire from I count it from 1948 because there was the Top Magics photo. I like throwing that one in of Evers and Chance. But then starting in 51 with the Topps game, and then starting in 52 with the traditional trading cards up until present day, there's a total of 1,970 Cubs players, and I have collected all 1,970 of them. And next year will probably be the year that crosses over to 2,000, if not the year after. The next goal was to complete my T206 Cubs team set, which if you've seen it in my videos from this year, I completed that goal at Strongsville. And these are 2 of the cards that I picked up this year, the other one being the Mordecai Brown. So that's 37 cards. That set's 100% complete, and I have it all displayed here in my office, and love that I've been able to complete that set. The next one is the 40s and 50s Bowman team set, and my goal for this year was to complete that. I needed 9 more cards. I picked up 7 so far, and I actually just picked up the 8th last night. So I've actually recorded this video 2 or 3 times. The last time I realized my audio cut out halfway through, and so this is my 3rd attempt on doing this, and the numbers are a little bit off because last night I picked up one of the cards that I need for the 1949 set, so I'm just missing 1 card from the 1949 set. So that actually brings me to 113 out of 114, or 98% complete. So that's definitely a card I'm looking to pick up either online before the National or at the National. I'll look through stacks of 49 Bowmans. The next that I talked about was doing the traded or update set. And there's 373 cards that fit within this, and this is like the flagship, it's growing every year. So my goal for this year was to pick up 200 cards. I'm a little bit behind pace with only 70 so far, but the way I've been able to pick these up a little bit quicker is many of them in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, you can just buy a complete team set for that year. And so that's how I've picked most of these up, because there aren't a lot of high value cards, and if you bought the cards individually, you'd end up paying a lot more than just buying. Usually I can get them for under $1 a card or 50 cents a card for many of those, but to me that helps complete that flagship set. And I don't know if I'll ever put those in binders or in some sort of display, but to have everything from Series 1, Series 2, and trade it or update is a big goal. Another one, this is a binder set that I'm doing, which is the Topps Gold Cubs team set, and I have these in a binder so I can flip through them. A few weeks ago I did that with my daughter, and she enjoyed seeing all the gold cards. She's 4 years old, so she likes any cards that are shiny. She recognizes the Cubs, and she also likes patch cards, anything that has fabric, or she calls them soft cards. So her goal card right now is to acquire a Cubs patch card that is shiny. So that's about as much as she knows. But it's been fun as she's gotten more interested in cards this year. With this set, I'm 50% complete. My goal was 72 cards, and I picked up 60 so far. I have targeted about 10 to 12 cards that are higher value in this, things like the Kris Bryant Gold rookie card, to try to pick up in order to knock off some of the more difficult cards in this run. Other than that, it's like the 2001 Topps Gold. Those cards they're harder to find at a decent price. And also the 2016 for the Cubs, those cards go for a premium because that is the year they won the World Series. So I'm 50% complete on that one and pretty close to reaching my goal for the year. Next up is the Venezuelan set, and these cards are just hard to find. That's why my goal was only 14 for the year. To find in any sort of decent condition, these are cards that mostly represent the same format and imagery as the base top set from that year. Shown here, bottom middle is the 1962 and the Venezuelan, and then the other three around it are the 1964. And these are always on thinner paper stock and rougher condition. They were often glued into albums, so the paper loss on the back is very common. And mostly I keep my eye out for these at the National. There's a few dealers that I know that will have raw Venezuelan cards, and that will be one thing I'm really looking for at the National if I go, is to pick up another 8 or so Venezuelan cards. So I'm 42% complete on that, and if I can get another 8, that would take me to 50% complete. Next up is the Chrome Platinum Anniversary, and there were 13 cards that I needed this year to get current, and then whenever the set for 2025 comes out, I'll also pick those up. So I did pick those up. I don't have them yet. They're ComC purchases that are shipping and will arrive in like a month or something. So I'm not in a huge hurry, but once I get those, I'll put this set into a binder. I love the fact that they're using the old style, but it has the modern technology of the Chrome and the modern look, with including both modern players, rookies, stars, as well as some of the legends of the game, which the Cubs have plenty of those. So this is where my goals for the year are changing. Initially, I set out to try to get 137 Topps Chrome cards as well as 246 OPC cards. And I've picked up some, but I want to change my strategy on this. And my strategy is going to change by focusing on one of these at a time, including the update. And I decided I wanted to try to finish Topps Update first before moving on to Topps Chrome or the OPC variations. So these are going to go on hold for the rest of this year while I focus on the other things, but just wanted to show where these are at so far. I made a little bit of progress, but I think picking up another 200, 300 cards for these two sets is not something I really want to focus on this year. Eventually, I would love to have them in the collection as sort of a well-rounded example of Cubs cards through the years. But for now, they can wait. And then the last thing is the type cards that I'm trying to collect a type. And I showed here an example of the 1969 Topps Super Ron Santo, which I have here in front of me as well. I picked this up on eBay just a week or two ago, and it came in the mail. by the way, for those of you that know, we were expecting a baby. She came last Friday. So I opened that right before we left to go to the hospital and got that card and then threw it on the table and we left. But she's doing well. I'm on paternity leave for this week and spending time with the family. And so that's some big family news to throw in the middle of the video. But that's just been really exciting for us as we enjoy that transition. I just thought of it because this card had just come in the mail right before we left. So this is one of the post-war cards that is a type card that didn't have the 1969 Top Super. They don't come up as often as the 70, 71 Top Supers from what I've seen. I don't know how you compare the exact population because the graded population is really similar, but people don't grade the oversized cards like the 70 Supers. But the 69 Supers are regular sized, they're trading card sized. So I would think that a higher percentage of that population would be graded, and meaning that overall there's a lower population of this card. They're harder to find, more expensive in general than the 70s, which can be, like the Santo 70 can be picked up for $10, but this was a little over $100 if I remember correctly. So with the type cards, my goal is really with cards, I don't want to focus as much on things like pins, cloth, coins, postcards, photos, matchbooks, and things like that. But when I went through, about a year ago, I kind of combed through TCDB and tried to put together all the different collectibles that fit within these categories for the Cubs to show how many different sets there are. And I'm more likely to pick up things like postcards and oversized cards because they fit within the same sort of two-dimensional image style as a trading card, even though they're a little larger. But my goal for this year has been to pick up 10 new type cards from the pre-war era, and I've done 4 so far, and post-war my goal was 20. I've done 13 so far, including this Ron Santo. And then the post-war all others is I wanted to try to pick up just a couple of things that fell outside of the card genre. So I picked up a couple of oversized cards, some exhibits that would fall into that category. I think that's in a photo. I think I picked up a team photo card as well. So that is my type collection progress so far. We'll try to focus a little bit more on the pre-war types heading into the second half of this year. So looking forward, there's half a year left, or 5.5 months left, as we're now past the halfway point in July. So my goals for this year, the first goal is I want to try to add a trophy card to the Ken Burns collection. So that's, like I mentioned earlier, something like a Grail card, but maybe not to that level. Something like a T206 Ty Cobb, or Cap Anson or King Kelly, or a card that would definitely be the biggest card in my collection. And probably a card that a few years ago I would have thought, that's a cool card if I ever can look at one, but I'll never own it. But I really wanted to set that goal to try to achieve it. And I'll talk more about that here in a week. I'll probably try to put out a national goals video of what I'm looking for at the national. And that will be the top of my list. As far as going to the national, I'm planning on it. But with a newborn, I'm holding everything loosely. I live close enough that I can drive there and go for a day, maybe a day and a half, and come back home and try to get there for the YouTube get-together and hang out and to see a bunch of friends and see people, and then get back home to be with the family. So that's the top goal I have, is for that trophy card. I want to finish the Bowman Cubs team set, which is just one more card now. And then 14 more T206 cards, as well as 130 cards for the Topps update or traded. Trying to pick up, probably about 10 more team sets for years to fill out those years. And then also the Topps Gold and 8 more Venezuelan cards, as well as the type cards that I mentioned. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to stay in line with my goals. I'm dropping the O-Pee-Chee goal and the Topps Chrome, but trying to stick and focus on this so I don't sort of lose where I'm headed in the hobby. It's always a challenge, especially going to a show like the National, where there's so much out there, so many cool things to see, that you just want to pick up anything that really kind of grabs your attention. And I don't want to go in with a list that's going to completely prohibit me from finding something really cool that I want to pick up, but at the same time, I don't want to walk away from the National saying, wow, I didn't accomplish any of my goals. Got distracted by all of these really cool opportunities and things that were going on, all the glitz and glamour and the bells and whistles and things like that are the National. So sorry about that interruption. I got the beloved message that I ran out of disk space on my computer as I was wrapping that up. So we'll see. I'm not sure where that ended, but I just wanted to wrap things up. Those are my goals for the National. Looking forward most of all to seeing some people if I'm able to make it and continuing to try to accomplish these goals I set out for this year. So if you've made it all the way to the end and saw the little glitch, congratulations. Thank you so much for watching and commenting. I appreciate everyone who takes time to watch the videos on my channel. And I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of your day, and go Cubs.